Do you think that's why people did that thing when they played Stairway to Heaven backwards and said that you were talking about Satan?
You know, I'm going to go straight back to the Beatles here, because there was a time when somebody wrote a thesis about Paul McCartney being dead. If you played back the records, there was something which said Paul is dead. And so then they started to play back all manner of records, and of course we were going to be main candidates for it. And somebody said, oh, it says My Sweet Satan.
Did you hear that?
And I thought, oh gosh, it's hard enough writing the music one way round rather than that way.
One of the most enduring urban legends of all time is the explanation of how can an artist achieve so much success in their lifetime and seem to have such a level of talent that rises above the norm. The explanation has often come up for thousands of years with certain artists that they must have had a transaction with the devil to give them so much talent and success. Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin were also put in that category, along with Robert Johnson, Franz Liszt, Niccolo Paganini, and many others over the course of time. Part of the reason I led off with this is just simply to get it behind us, because I'm much more interested in the real story and getting it out to you as artists so that we can all learn from this great band and the great success that they had inside the mind of Jimmy Page, who was the creative architect of Led Zeppelin, taking a look at what was the creative process, what made this band work. So having put that behind us, let's take a look at the real creative process of Led Zeppelin as it was architected by Jimmy Page in today's Creativity is Everywhere. Creativity is constant. Creativity is limitless. And maybe the most surprising is that when you are in that flow, creativity is effortless. Really it is. Led Zeppelin was a band of 4 incredibly talented musicians working together in a very unique way for the life of the band. John Paul Jones on bass, Jimmy Page on guitar, Robert Plant on vocals, and John Bonham on drums. All kind of legendary in their own fields, and then combined created a true dream team of a band. However, that said, the architect of the band creatively, the producer, the mastermind behind the band was Jimmy Page. So in this video, I'm going to focus specifically on Jimmy Page and the process that he personally went through to create the band, to lead the band, and produce the whole direction that resulted in the success of the band. So let's take a look at this. Jimmy Page, by the time he was a teenager, was incredibly accomplished already as a musician. By the age of 16, he was working as a studio musician with professional musicians, in which he had to not only be aware of all the different styles of music that were out there, he had to be proficient in playing them, improvising parts on the fly, and getting everything right on the first try. The world of being a studio musician is one in which you can't afford to make mistakes. He was a top call musician at the age of 16 and 17. So let's not discount just how talented he really was and how truly proficient. Already at that age, he also had an incredible variety of musical influences. So let's take a quick look at that.
The riffs from the Chicago, the sort of Howling Wolf and this sort of thing.
I'll feel better if you understand. You won't listen to me.
You get like this hybrid really of blues music and folk music.
The sky was gray. I wondered how tomorrow could ever follow today.
And rockabilly.
Oh yeah, ever since the world began. Oh, 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 oh.
It's all in there. Modern classicals there too. And my appreciation of Indian music and Arabic music. And all this stuff was there before I even did sessions, but now I've got a chance to really just keep expanding all these ideas, you know?
So really, all of the creative development that you saw across the career of Led Zeppelin, all those influences were already in Jimmy's mind before the band ever started, as well as his own guitar playing skills, improvisation skills, and recording techniques, which he paid attention to while he was doing that studio work.
By the time I finished being a studio musician, I learned a lot. I made it my business to learn how to read music, also how to record with the microphone placing, the whole science of microphone placing, and also being a musical arranger and producer.
So the first real takeaway that I get from this is to just go with what you know. That's what Jimmy Page was doing. Those were the influences he happened to have. Those were the skills that he happened to have, and he just went with those. So for creative people like you and me, the important takeaway is to go with what you know. What are your influences? What are your skills? Go with that. Don't try to be something that you're not. There was an incredible amount of creativity that went into the presentation of the band and what you would call the marketing side of it, which also was directly reflective of Jimmy Page's creativity. This was not a normal record company rollout of a new band. This was something that was engineered specifically by Jimmy Page because of his awareness. So that's the next thing I want to cover, is Jimmy Page's awareness, not only of the chemistry of the band, but also the opportunity that was set before him.
Robert Plant was just a local singer in Birmingham. John Bonham was a drummer who just about started to move out of Birmingham. John Paul Jones I'd known as a studio musician. We had a sort of rehearsal, and the rehearsal was just, it changed everybody's life from just the first song that we played, because the intensity of these four master musicians coming together was something that none of us have ever experienced before.
Before these four people got in the room and played together for the first time, Jimmy already had in mind the textures and the kind of sounds and the influences that he wanted to put together in a band. When he found these four and they played, and it was obvious that this was going to be the group that could be that vehicle to bring that vision to life. But beyond that, there was another level of awareness that Jimmy had that's extremely important at this point. Because of his previous experience playing with the Yardbirds and touring the United States a little bit already, he was a little bit aware of what was going on in the world of music. He saw an unmet need that this band could fill, which ended up being crucially important to the success of the band.
There was a form of radio that had nothing whatsoever to do with pop music, really. It was an underground music. When the Yardbirds folded, I could see that was the route, and I knew that we'd already played these underground venues, and that the underground radio was waiting. It just needed the product to go on there. The pop music ones, the AM, would just play single records. They were going to play on FM whole sides of albums, so that's 20 minutes at a shot. So I figured that if you were to have quite a variety of music, one track basically following up the next, and you had quite a diversity within that music, that you would get people really listening in and buying into the whole idea of what you were doing.
So now that the stage has been set with Jimmy's musical vision, his influences, his skills, and now having assembled the band members, and also seeing a unique opportunity for a new audience to hear new music, the music now has to actually get written. And that brings us to the recording of the first album, Led Zeppelin 1.
I mean, initially from Led Zeppelin 1, I knew exactly the whole of the textures that I wanted to present to people, so that it would go, wow, that's really interesting. I haven't heard so many things approached in one go, you know. It's not like you pull the things out of a hat. It's, you know, write the titles down, pull them out of a hat. You actually know exactly what you've got, the full expanse of the album material. Sometimes things get left off. And then you sort of piece them together in such a way that on vinyl in those days, it would be 20 minutes, they'd play the whole side, and that would even lead into turning it over and playing the next side. So it was very calculated in a way, but it was with artistic integrity.
That last little statement was so important. He said that it was calculated, but with artistic integrity. That's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? That creativity has a spontaneous side to it, but there was also a strategic side to it as well, that Jimmy used both in the formation of the songs of the band. So when he was envisioning Led Zeppelin 1, he was envisioning something that had a dramatic flow to it that would last 20 minutes long. You turn over the record and you have another 20 minutes. So that was a strategic outline, while using elements of improvisation and coming up with acoustic guitar riffs at home, having the band all contribute their parts in a spontaneous way to fill out the songs, but it was to fulfill a strategic role, not only in terms of the album itself, but in terms of the marketing to the public. So that's really the final thing I want to bring out about Jimmy Page's creativity, was that he exercised both strategic creativity and spontaneous creativity.
Every night we were pushing it. We paid a lot of attention to each other. We could hear each other. So consequently, if somebody's taking, I know it's sort of very guitar-led, but if Robert was to sort of sing anything at any point, we'd be right on it like that. And so it was such fun. It was incredible fun. And when you walked up the steps to go on stage, you didn't know what would be happening all the way through that concert, and what would evolve and what would come out of nowhere by the time you walked off.
And then finally, the band made the decision to wrap it up when the drummer, John Bonham, died. There was a lot of resistance to that from the public. Why couldn't they go on? Why couldn't they find another drummer? But there was a really specific reason for that, and it had to do with the creative process of the band. Check this out.
So, but when John died, it had to be over.
It was a four-piece band that when it toured, each concert had different elements to it from the night before, indeed the night that was going to be in front of it. And so it was constantly changing. We had this, you know, we had this whole, we'd built up this whole sort of elevation really to how we played, and synchronicity and connection, that to actually, once you lost one of those four members, and at the time like we did, there was no way you could bring somebody in and rehearse pieces that were from bootlegs or sound tapes or whatever, to say, well, we did it like this, like you were saying, in 1975. Can you do a bit of that along with what we did here in 1977? You know, the whole thing would have been so disconnected that it would have been impossible to actually be able to play and not see John Bonham there.
So that concludes our look at Jimmy Page's creative process, the mastermind behind Led Zeppelin. It had to do with his influences, his skills, his awareness of band chemistry, his awareness of what was going on in the world of music, his creative process, which was both spontaneous and strategic. I really hope you enjoyed this. I enjoyed putting this together. If you like this material, click subscribe, like the video, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you, and I hope to see you next time.